Imagine this. You wake up one morning, and for a brief, disorienting moment, everything feels still. But then it returns. The familiar, heavy weight pressing against your chest. You go about your routine just like yesterday, just like the day before. You smile at the right moments, respond when spoken to, and play your part in the grand performance of life. No one suspects a thing. You are functional. You are fine. But are you? Deep down beneath the surface of all your well-crafted responses, something stirs. A shadow moving just beyond the edges of your awareness. A dull ache that you've learned to silence. Maybe it's the anger you swallowed years ago. The heartbreak you never fully processed. The quiet fear that you are not enough. Or maybe it's something even older. An echo of childhood wounds, unspoken and unresolved, shaping your every interaction without you even realizing it. You tell yourself it's nothing. You've convinced yourself that time erases pain, that the past is dead and buried, that what you don't acknowledge can't hurt you. But deep inside, you know, it can, and it does. Because pain does not disappear when ignored. It festers, it waits, and when it finally emerges, it does so in ways you least expect. It hides in the sudden outbursts of anger over trivial things, in the inexplicable anxiety that gnaws at you when you're alone, in the quiet resentment toward people who have done nothing wrong, in the endless distractions you seek to avoid sitting with your own thoughts, and perhaps most terrifyingly, it hides in the person you become. How many decisions have you made not out of freedom, but out of fear? How many relationships have you destroyed, not because they were wrong for you, but because your own wounds made closeness unbearable? How many dreams have you abandoned, not because you lacked ability, but because some long-buried belief told you that you weren't worthy? Now consider this. What if the person you are today is not truly you, but a product of all the pain you never faced? What if everything you think is just your personality is really a series of survival mechanisms? Defenses built around wounds you never allowed to heal. What if the way you see the world, the way you react to people, even the way you love and the way you suffer, is being dictated by something deep within you that you refuse to confront? Most people go their entire lives without ever asking these questions. They tell themselves they are fine. They keep moving forward, suppressing, distracting, numbing, until one day they wake up and realize they are no longer in control. Because the pain you hide will one day control you. And if you don't face it, it will find a way to make you. But why does this happen? Why does unprocessed pain have such a hold over us? To answer that, we must journey into the hidden recesses of the mind, into the psychology of repression, the philosophy of suffering, and the mechanisms by which the past we bury finds its way back into our lives. In this video, we'll explore how the pain you bury can silently control every part of your life, and how facing it can set you free. Are you ready to take back control? Because if you don't, that pain will one day own you. Stay with us and discover how to break the chains holding you back. Pain is not passive. It is not some fading scar that time alone can erase. Pain is active. It is alive. And if left unchecked, it buries itself in the deepest corners of your psyche, waiting for the right moment to reclaim control. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the hidden, repressed parts of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge. The darker impulses, the unresolved wounds, the emotions we suppress because they are too painful, too inconvenient, too contradictory to the image we want to maintain. Jung warned that whatever we push into the unconscious does not simply disappear. It rots in the depths of our being, poisoning us from within. But society teaches us the opposite. From childhood, we are conditioned to suppress. Don't cry. Don't be angry. Don't dwell on the past. We are taught that certain emotions are bad, that to express them is to be weak, dramatic, or broken. So we learn to perform. We master the art of masking our pain with smiles, with busyness, with endless distractions. We push our suffering down deeper and deeper until we almost convince ourselves it is gone. Almost. But repression is not healing. And the pain you do not process becomes the master you do not see. Psychologists have long studied the effects of repression on the human mind. Sigmund Freud believed that unresolved trauma does not fade. It simply transforms, manifesting as anxiety, compulsions, and self-sabotaging behaviors. The mind, desperate to protect itself, buries pain so deep that it distorts reality itself. Consider this. Have you ever reacted to something in a way that even you didn't understand? Perhaps a simple rejection left you devastated, or a minor inconvenience triggered an outsized rage. Maybe you find yourself drawn to toxic relationships, repeating the same painful patterns over and over, as if compelled by some unseen force. This is not random. It is not a coincidence. It is your unresolved pain, shaping your choices, your relationships, your reality. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this phenomenon in society at large. He believed that unacknowledged suffering leads to resentment, a slow-burning poison that turns people bitter and self-destructive. When we do not face our suffering, we find ways to externalize it, blaming others, lashing out, seeking power over what we cannot control within ourselves. It is no surprise that those who refuse to confront their pain often become the most cruel, the most manipulative, the most lost. Arthur Schopenhauer took it even further. He argued that suffering is the fundamental condition of existence, not something to be avoided, but something that defines us. To live is to suffer. And yet most people spend their lives running from this truth, seeking comfort instead of growth, numbing instead of transforming. But here lies the great paradox. The more you avoid pain, the more power it has over you. Look at modern society. Everywhere you turn, there are ways to escape reality. Endless entertainment, social media, consumerism, addictions disguised as coping mechanisms. The modern world is built to keep you distracted, to keep you numb, to ensure that you never sit in silence long enough to hear the echoes of your own suffering. Because if you did, if you truly faced what lies beneath the surface, you might realize something terrifying. You are not free. You are shackled to everything you refuse to acknowledge. And the longer you deny it, the stronger its hold becomes. But how does this hidden force actually control your life? How does unresolved pain manipulate your behavior in ways you cannot see? Repressed pain does not stay buried. It seeps into everything. It shapes your thoughts, dictates your reactions, and influences your choices in ways you never intended. It does not ask for permission. It operates in the shadows, distorting your reality without you ever realizing it. Think about the way you react to conflict. Do you lash out or do you withdraw? Do you seek control or do you surrender? Most people believe their responses are just who they are. But what if they're not? What if every reaction you have is the echo of a wound you never healed? Consider relationships. Some people sabotage love before it even has a chance to grow. They push away those who care for them, afraid that intimacy will expose too much. Others cling too tightly, terrified of abandonment, mistaking codependency for connection. And then there are those who numb themselves entirely, detached, indifferent, convinced they don't need anyone at all. But in every case, the root is the same: fear shaped by unprocessed pain. The consequences go beyond personal struggles. They extend into society itself. Unresolved pain fuels resentment, which in turn breeds division. People project their suffering onto the world, blaming others, clinging to ideologies that validate their wounds. The most broken individuals often become the most extreme, whether in politics, religion, or personal relationships, because certainty is easier than self-confrontation. And then there's addiction, not just to substances, but to anything that numbs discomfort. Workaholism, social media, endless entertainment, anything to avoid silence, because in silence, the truth emerges. The truth that something inside is unresolved, that something inside is still hurting. But here is the most dangerous part. The longer pain is ignored, the more it controls you. Over time, the weight becomes unbearable. Depression creeps in. Anxiety tightens its grip. Unexplained anger flares at the wrong people at the wrong times. And before you know it, you are no longer steering your life. Your past wounds are. But it does not have to be this way. There is a way out, a way to reclaim control. And it begins with a rebellion, a conscious decision to face what has long been avoided, to confront the darkness rather than letting it control you, to understand that healing does not come from avoidance, but from stepping into the fire and coming out stronger. So how do you do it? How do you break free from pain before it consumes you? Freedom begins the moment you stop running, the moment you turn and face what has been chasing you all along, the moment you realize that pain is not your enemy, it is your teacher. But how do you break free from something that has controlled you for so long? The first step is awareness. Most people live in a state of psychological autopilot, reacting to life without ever questioning why. But real change begins when you stop and ask yourself, what am I running from? What emotions do you avoid? What memories do you refuse to revisit? What truths about yourself make you uncomfortable? Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." To reclaim control, you must bring what is hidden into the light. You must name your pain, speak it, acknowledge it, because the things we deny have power over us, but the things we confront begin to lose their grip. The second step is radical self-honesty. This is where most people fail, because true honesty is brutal. It demands that you admit how you've sabotaged yourself, how you've projected your pain onto others, how you've allowed fear to shape your life. And this is not easy. It is far more comfortable to blame the past, society, or circumstances. But comfort is not the goal. Freedom is. Then comes the hardest part, acceptance. You cannot erase the past. You cannot undo what has been done, but you can choose what happens next. And this is where power lies, not in forgetting pain, but in integrating it. Pain, when faced, becomes wisdom. Trauma, when processed, becomes strength. Every wound carries a lesson, but only if you are willing to learn from it. The final step? Action. Healing is not passive. It does not happen just by thinking or understanding. It happens through doing. That means breaking the patterns that have controlled you. That means setting boundaries where none existed. That means allowing yourself to feel fully and deeply without shame. And perhaps most importantly, it means rewriting your story. You are not the victim of your past. You are the author of your future. The pain you once hid does not have to define you. It can become the very thing that shapes your transformation. But only if you choose it. The question is, will you? And that brings us to the final truth, the deepest realization of all, the one that changes everything, the final, most powerful realization. Here is the truth most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Pain is not the problem. Your resistance to it is. The suffering that haunts you does not come from the wounds themselves, but from the way you fight them, suppress them, and refuse to let them transform you. You have been conditioned to believe that pain is something to escape, something to silence. But what if it's not? What if pain is the doorway to everything you have ever sought? Look at those who have truly found themselves. The strongest, the wisest, the most unshakable individuals, every single one of them has walked through fire. They have faced their darkness, wrestled with it, and emerged on the other side not as victims, but as warriors. The difference between those who remain trapped and those who break free is not the absence of pain, but their willingness to face it head-on. The moment you stop fearing your pain is the moment it loses its power over you. Nietzsche said, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." Life will never be without hardship. There will always be moments of despair, betrayal, and loss. But suffering is not what destroys people. Meaninglessness is. The ones who break are not the ones who experience pain, but the ones who see no purpose in it. So the final, most powerful realization is this: your pain has a purpose. Every scar, every wound, every dark moment has been shaping you, forcing you to see something you have been blind to. It has been trying to teach you something vital about yourself, about the world, about what truly matters. And until you stop running, until you stop numbing yourself with distractions and avoidance, you will never understand what it has been trying to say. But the moment you listen, truly listen, is the moment everything changes. Because pain is not a prison. It is a guide. It is showing you where you need to grow. It is revealing the parts of yourself that are still unfinished, still waiting to be made whole. And this is the choice you now face. You can continue to hide from it, letting it control you from the shadows, or you can turn toward it, embrace it, and use it to become something more than you ever imagined. The pain you hide will one day control you, but the pain you face will one day set you free. And in that freedom, you will finally understand. You were never broken. You were simply unfinished. The only question left is, what will you do now?